When we see suffering, it upsets us. We feel other people's suffering. It's like we're kind of compelled to care. I'm Tim McCaskill. I'm, I guess, an old gay activist dinosaur. Came out in the 70s and got involved in the body politic, and then was part of the Right to Privacy Committee, trying to keep the baths open after the bath raids, doing Committee of AIDS Action now, and I've sort of bounced from one thing or another over the last, how many, 50 years? My attachment to the baths, I mean, that was the place that I first learned to have recreational sex, I guess, right? I love sex. I love having like lots of sex with different people and different intensities, and from sweet and romantic to hard and all that kind of stuff, right? Drugs can make you more sensitive, can produce a sense of excitement, a sense of adventure. I mean, they can intensify the experience, right? My drug use in the bath usually is a good token of good joint and Red Bull, and that gives me enough of a buzz to last me through an evening. I can remember I noticed a lot of guys were coming up to me, I thought cruising, and then they would say, "Are you partying, dude?" And I didn't know what they were talking about, right? Like, am I partying, dude? No, I'm in the bath. What do you? I didn't get it, and then I finally figured it out. People come to the baths for sex and maybe do some drugs to kind of make it more exciting. But these guys, they're here to do the drugs, not to have the sex, right? And so I began to ask people what their experiences with crystal meth, like what did they know about it? And one of the questions that I would start asking people was, how did you first use? Oh, I was with some guys and they were really hot and they said, try this, it's gonna make the sex really amazing. So I did, right? That's the story that you hear over and over and over again, right? And I remember one night in Excess, I saw this guy in his room and he kind of cruised me, and so I came in and we started playing around. He was off somehow, right? And he couldn't get it up. And then all of a sudden he said, well, I have to go off for a bit. I'll see you later. And he like disappeared into the hallway, so it was fine. I saw him later down in the common room, right? And so I said, like, how are you doing? Are you okay, right? Because it seemed there was something off. He started talking to me about he's using crystal meth and he's really screwing him up, and he's lost his job and he's going to go into rehab tomorrow. And so this was the last time he wanted to do it tonight, and it was going to be the perfect one, and that was going to be the end, right? So at that point, I began to get really kind of worried about this particular drug and what was happening to people in the community, because the people that I was seeing, they weren't really doing all that well. Well, I think of one guy that I've known forever. We'd get together for lunch, and I said, like, how are you doing? And he said, well, not too good. Like, I lost my job. And like, why did you lose your job? And it turns out, well, I started doing crystal meth, and I kept showing up late, and so they finally got rid of me. Now I can't find another job. And maybe 6 months later, he'd been thrown out of his apartment, right? And for me, it was kind of heartbreaking to see this guy that, had been so together, like suddenly so not together, and not aware of what was happening to him. Another friend of mine who I'd known for a long time, at some point we were talking about sex, and he said, that's part of the problem for me because I can't have sex anymore. The only way I can have sex is with crystal. And I'm thinking, God, I'm talking to guys who've like lost their homes, lost their jobs, lost their families, and these guys lost sex as well because of this drug. Why isn't anybody talking about this in the community? This is like really bad shit, right? Part of the other problem is that there's kind of always this slippage between drugs are bad and people who do drugs are bad. If you think that the people who do meth are these kind of really scuzzy people who do all sorts of bad things and da-da-da-da-da, right? You kind of feel immune. But if you kind of recognize that like anybody can get sucked into this kind of stuff, I think you're far more likely to recognize your own vulnerabilities. If the people who use drugs were bad people, then we wouldn't need to worry about them, right? But we know that's not the case. They're good people. They've got all sorts of potential and capacity, and they're the same people. But this horrible thing is happening to them. As long as anybody's alive, there's theoretically at least some hope. But boy, it seems that people who've been into this for a long time and have really seen their lives spiral down, it's really hard. You know, you wonder, like, how in the world is somebody like me who, you know, comes from a position of a friendship and a caring, but then not trained as a therapist, you know, how are we going to help? How are we supposed to help? The thing that I focus on is, like, how can we stop people from getting to this? I think human beings are kind of empathetic. We tend to care for people, right? When we see suffering, it upsets us. We feel other people's suffering. It's like we're kind of compelled to care. If we stop caring, we're kind of cutting off a piece of ourselves as well, right? We're cutting off a piece of our own humanity. Caring is what people do for each other. And if they don't do that, then we're somehow becoming less than we should be, less than we could be.